Mics are hot. Switch it over. It is finally here. Penn State Whiteout Week is upon us. Penn State hosts Iowa this weekend. A lot to talk about today. Final thoughts on the Illinois game. And then Aeneas Hawkins will be joining us to talk about the latest in Penn State and his new show, The Lion's Den, on state media, the Mercury. And we'll finish with our score predictions and bold predictions per usual. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Shawn Kane and former Penn State defensive lineman and current host of state media's The Lion's Den, Aeneas Hawkins. Welcome to the show, gentlemen. Aeneas, how are you doing?
Doing really well. Anytime I get to join you guys on the show is a good day, so I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thanks for coming on. And the pleasure is all ours. No question about it. Host of a podcast. I mean, how fun has it been for you talking to current players? I mean, it looks fun from a spectator perspective. You're absolutely killing it over there. Like I was told you before we started the show, you are able to direct and organize and keep people on target and on topic really well, and you transition to other topics extremely well. Very impressed so far, and I guess this would be episode 4 coming out this week.
Episode 4 this week. I appreciate the kind words. It's fun now because I don't get the privilege of playing football anymore. And when people ask me, Hawk, what is it that you miss about Penn State football? The first answer I give them is the locker room. The teammates, the banter, the conversations around games, and just life as an athlete as a whole is something that I love to have conversations about. So the podcast has been a great way to kind of revitalize that a little bit. To me, the feel that I'm hoping to give when we do that Lions Den is the locker room. It's guys having candid conversations about what's really going on, the experiences, the things that they're feeling, and hopefully that is getting communicated in a way that the fans are able to digest as well. But it's been a lot of fun, man. Shout out Mercury, shout out Adam Brenneman and the team for what they've been able to put together over there. Definitely enjoying it so far.
Yeah, you've had Theo Johnson, Keandre Lambert-Smith, Nick Dawkins, Jerry Cross on there. Who do you have coming on this week, or that hasn't been released yet?
Yeah, we got the great Curtis Jacobs on this week. We just shot that episode on Monday. Kurt's a guy that is, full of personality, has seen a lot, has spent some good quality time at Penn State playing meaningful minutes for a while now. So definitely was excited about that. And we got some big ones coming up. Olu Fashion is a guy we'll have on soon. Some other big name guys, and hopefully some coaches here in the next couple episodes as well. So stay tuned for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about you and Penn State defensive line. You were at Penn State for a couple of years. What was your experience like at Penn State? Obviously, you didn't get to play too much football, but clearly it set you up to be successful. You just moved out of state college recently. What was your Penn State experience like, and what can you share with us?
Yeah, I mean, top to bottom, huge highlight of my life so far. Always had the dream of playing college football. Was recruited pretty heavily coming out of high school. Had a lot of different opportunities, but the moment I met Coach Franklin and his staff, I kind of knew that was where I belonged, where I needed to be at. Actually, my family, my dad played at the University of Cincinnati. They had just landed Luke Fickell. For a long time, I really wanted to go play for him. My dad and I had a conversation. You mentioned, not really getting to play at Penn State and having some injuries and those types of things in my career. And one of the things that he and I talked about was the fact that if football doesn't work, you want to make sure that you pick a school, a university, a place where they're going to support you and your endeavors beyond the field, right? Coach Franklin communicated that a lot when I was a recruit. But then one thing that I really appreciate about him, and a reason I'll never have any negative, things to say about him, is that when that time came where, they had to have my back and they kept me on scholarship and they kept me in the building when they realistically weren't gaining anything as a football player, they had my back. They let me finish my degree. They set me up with some good connections and some opportunities to, chase this broadcast thing. So for that, I'm always thankful. Even though I wasn't playing a lot, definitely an experience I'll never forget.
We remember when you were with the program, and all we ever heard about you was, you know, professional, great personality. I mean, just the list goes on of attributes. And so it's no surprise, and it's honestly a pleasure to have you on because we've heard about your personality and how personable you are, and it's just fantastic to have you on the show.
I appreciate that, man. I definitely appreciate that.
Okay, let's talk actual football here. Coming into the year, Penn State fans pretty much wouldn't shut up about can they stop the run? Can the defensive line get bigger? Are they able to handle the likes of Michigan, and so forth? So far, a quarter of the way through the season, believe it or not, where do you think this defensive line stands up? Are you happy with their performance, and do you think they're prepared for the likes of, say, Michigan or Georgia or somebody who might be able to run the ball a little bit more effectively?
Yeah, I think it's a fair question, and it's a question that I was asking as a former D lineman, especially with the now absence of PJ Mustipher, a guy who wasn't going to fill up the stat sheets, but for the most part was going to add a lot of value in the run game and slow those things down. You lose him. It's been cited, obviously, that Hakeem Beamon is the guy that had to get heavier, questions around Devon Elise, all those types of things. So going into the season, I had those questions. I'm in a place now where I feel like they're doing a decent job against the run. Most of the explosive runs that I see are those when people are out of their gaps. It's really not been a size issue, in my opinion. It's a gap accountability issue, which a lot of teams in college football struggle with early in the season. So my concern level is pretty low. Even the Michigan game last year, which people love to cite as obviously being a big problem, if you go cut the film on, pretty much every one of those explosive runs you can attribute to somebody being out of a gap when they shouldn't be and not getting forced out of a gap. It's them just not being where they need to be. So, to me, that comes back to, Manny Diaz is now in year 2 with the program. Guys are more comfortable. You're starting to see less MAs and less of those things. So I think they're in a good place. As far as, actual guys and how they're playing, I think, we all know about Chop Robinson. He got a ton of love in the offseason, but getting a guy like Adisa Isaac, back healthy is huge. He's a guy that, I got to see as a young player. And from day one, when he was on campus, we all knew that he had special talent, was going to be a big time player, and just wasn't healthy. So finally getting him back, Hakeem Beamon with the weight up, Zane Durant, a young guy playing valuable minutes, reminds me a lot of Kevin Givens, who was a senior when I was a freshman. And then you got guys like Devon Elise, some depth at the end. Seeing Zariah Fisher get a sack last week, that was like, watching my son make a play. That's my young guy, man. It's exciting. Amin Vanover getting in the mix. So I think they're in a good place. Obviously, Michigan and Ohio State present a whole different set of challenges. But I think the guys in that building know that, and they're preparing to handle it.
Okay. I want people to know right now that we did not pay him to say any of that stuff, because you pretty much hit all of our talking points that we have been talking about pretty much for the last year, especially the size versus gap question. And then you mentioned Hakeem Beamon. We've lately been calling him Hakeem Beefman,
Love it.
because of the addition of about 20 pounds of weight to him. And then you even hit on my favorite player, Disa Isaac, and you also hit on Amin Vanover, and you were talking to the Amin Vanover support club. We are huge fans of Amin Vanover. Really excited to see him get back into the rotation and play more snaps. Obviously, he made the trip last week, but hadn't played in the first 2 games. So very excited to have him back to full strength and excited to see what he can do. Shawn, what do you have for him?
So Cory took a few of my questions, but I do have one that I'm curious about. So you came in with Micah Parsons.
Yes.
How would you say, coming from where he came from, you guys came in together. He had quite an interesting time with being recruited. What are your thoughts on the success, both that he's had in college and that he now has in the NFL, where he's arguably the best player in football?
Yeah, it's interesting. The perspective that I have, I first got to know Mike when I was like 15 or 16. And the reason we got connected was like on an Ohio State visit. Being an Ohio kid, him being a 5-star, we were there together, got to know him there, obviously came in with him. The one thing that I tell people about Micah that doesn't get talked about enough, the thing that I think defines him outside of obviously is, God-given athletic talent. He is such a hyper-competitive individual. He doesn't talk like one. He may not walk around like one, but when he's placed in those moments where he's forced to compete, he does it at the highest level I've seen with any of my teammates. to see him now, with the success he's having in the NFL, I think one thing that people don't talk about enough is the fact that he's still a new defensive end. He's gone back to that position. He hasn't done it at a high level really before the NFL. He didn't do much of it at Penn State, if any. So he's still learning the position. He's getting better and better this year. I mean, just the first few games you cut it on, he is more defined as a pass rusher. If you look at his early wins in the first couple of years in the NFL, it was a lot of just athletic talent getting him to the football. You're seeing him use his hands, throwing hump moves, throwing club rips, line it up in a 3 technique and pass rushing there. He's just evolved so much that it's going to be a nightmare for people to deal with as long as he's in his physical prime. As far as Micah Parsons, the person, I just saw him a couple weeks ago when he visited Penn State. The thing that stands out to me now versus where he was as a recruit is just the maturity level. He's a guy that gets it. He's always been a good-hearted dude. It is hard for young guys, especially with that much clout at such a young age, to always make the right decisions and to always be in the right place at the right time. Micah has always been a good dude, and he's figured it out. He's matured, and now you see him even doing some cool things off of the field. The camps back home, giving back to people in need. It's a pleasure to watch him blossom into the dude that we all knew he was going to be.
Yeah, Franklin, I mean, he was just gushing about he barely even talked about Micah the football player as much as he was the person. And I just think that's great to see a guy come from where he came from. And like you said, he did have the maturity. He had some, growing up to do when he got to Penn State. Yeah. And he's just doing really well. And also, you're from Cincinnati. There's a guy from Cincinnati who came before you, Shawn Clifford. Did you ever play him in high school? I'm just very curious.
So, Shawn and I were in the same conference. We played for, the biggest rivalry in Ohio. Look up Moeller and St. I mean, those games, 10, 15,000 in attendance every single year. They're giant deals. So my junior year, Shawn's senior year in high school, we played against each other. He doesn't like to admit it. You can check the tape. I had a couple sacks on him, a bunch of QB hits, but I will say they won the game. He led a nice little fourth quarter drive in Shawn Clifford fashion and beat us, of course. But yeah, Shawn and I go way back.
That's awesome. Leave it to our Shawn to ask some awesome questions there. All right. Micah Parsons is kind of the talk of the town right now, so that's awesome insight there. I agree with you. It's just like a hot knife through butter right now watching, and he's doing that against NFL offensive linemen. It's just absurd. It's just insane. Penn State, again, quarter of the way through the season, haven't really had to flex their muscles too much, haven't gone up against top talent competition yet. But how would you, not necessarily give me an actual letter grade, but how would you grade their performance as a whole right now? And has your perspective on them changed, or their outlook on them changed at all since the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. It's tough because they haven't played great competition, like you said. I get on Twitter. I watch the games just like any other fan now does. I get on Twitter and I see people like, oh, what's wrong with the offense? What's wrong with the O-line? X, Y, Z. They're not showing everything that they have in the arsenal. They're not going to until they have to. They're keeping some things plugged away. I give them a solid B+ through this point of the season. I think they're doing some good things. One thing that I talked about on my podcast the other day was the fact that they're playing complementary football. And the Illinois game, to me, showed that. When the offense wasn't playing well, here comes the defense with 5 takeaways. And that's what great teams, to me, are able to do. When one side of the ball needs to be picked up, the other side tends to do it. One thing I will say offensively that I'm excited to see and I hope to see more of is that complementary offense where, hey, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, you want to stack that box? Okay, here comes the play action pass. Let's get Theo Johnson involved. Let's get Tyler Warren going. Let's hit him, for big shots. And Mike Yurcich is a guy who understands offense and how to call plays. So to me, when they're not doing that as often as fans would like to see, it's probably for a reason. They want to keep some things in that arsenal until they need to use it.
Yeah, let's talk about their opponent on Saturday. Before we hopped on here, you said that you were actually a pretty big Iowa fan. Is that correct?
Don't put that out there. They're going to be sending me messages about Twitter DMs here in a minute. That is not the truth. That is not the truth. Not an Iowa guy. Obviously that game, I think even more so than people realize, internally means a lot. That's a program that, everybody in the Penn State football building has respect for. You know what you're going to get when you play them. They're a tough physical team year in and year out. And they're not going to duck anybody. And one thing that I've seen with Iowa, minus last year, is they are known to knock off an opponent that they're not picked to knock off because of how tough and physical that they play. So I'm looking forward to that game on Saturday for sure.
Whiteout Saturday. Just walk us through what it's like as a player going through the tunnel and coming out on the field. James Franklin talks about just being in the moment for 5 or 6 seconds and really taking it in. I mean, from a defensive perspective as well, what's it like having that crowd behind you? Just kind of, what are your thoughts on the whiteout?
Yeah, well, I'll start with my first whiteout experience. Now, keep in mind the context rather, that my whole family played college football or in the NFL. So, before Penn State, I'd been to AFC championships, been to big bowl games, had seen it, done it, all those things. I ran out of the tunnel for the whiteout in 2018 against Ohio State, and I felt the ground shaking. I see the sea of white, and I'm like immediately overcome with emotion. It's like no other environment in football, in sports, in my opinion. I think it stacks up pretty well against any of them. So, that is the big thing there. As far as defensively, it doesn't get talked about enough. Playing in that whiteout is like having superpowers. When you're on that field, when you get in a 3rd and 7, a 3rd and 8, maybe it's a longer drive and you normally feel that fatigue that sets in on those long drives. When that crowd gets going in that whiteout, man, the adrenaline that rushes through those guys is, their veins is like nothing else. And especially as a pass rusher, right? That's actually, I think about the 2016 whiteout game where Ohio State gets knocked off. And all the guys in my class that committed because of that, the D-line in that fourth quarter, I mean, they were absolutely insane. The crowd's behind them. It's loud. The offensive line is guessing the snap count just like the defense because of how loud it is. So definitely, one of those experiences that you definitely don't forget about.
Yeah, that offensive line part to me is so important because I don't think that part is talked about enough, that offensive line and really the whole offense has to go to a simpler cadence because they literally can't hear anything. And how much does that help when you're lined up pinning your ears back, where when that ball is going to get snapped and you kind of can almost guess when it's going to come?
Yeah, it makes the world of a difference. That's the biggest adjustment between high school and college to me is, what offenses are able to do with a snap count. They can weaponize it in a way. If you got a D-line in a controlled situation where hey, these are pass rushers, they can get off on the football, you can do all kinds of things with the snap count to manipulate that, right? You take out the ability for everybody to hear, that all gets erased, right? So, to me, and you can even go look at other games, when those D-lines in these loud environments are in these 3rd and longs, you can see offensive tackles looking through their peripheral at the football, just like the defensive ends are. So it immediately levels the playing field for those guys on the defensive side of the ball.
Shawn?
Yeah, sometimes I'm even thinking, God, the guys on defense, they probably have trouble communicating as well. Like, is that like kind of a challenge to just be able to communicate on defense and because you're getting signals in from, Diaz on the sidelines and, you're just trying to communicate with each other.
It can definitely be tough, especially if you're a young player who can be reliant sometimes on some of the vets in the room to look at you and correct you on what your job is. It can definitely be a challenge. Those guys do a great job preparing, obviously, with the play calls and the signals. Another thing you talk about, we do have a bunch of signals that we could give on the field, but you got to be careful in this day and age. Every team has somebody up in the box watching those signals. So what you don't want to do is, because you can't hear, give the signal to whatever whoever's up in that box watching you. So it can definitely cause some havoc for the young guys who are on the field.
Just because you brought it up, obviously the whiteout, Franklin even said it today after practice about it's not just a big recruiting weekend for football, but for all sports, it's a big recruiting weekend. But like, is it the auto commit kind of feeling that maybe Penn State fans think it is, going to a whiteout visit and experiencing that? And obviously assuming Penn State wins. 2016, I know, was like the very far extreme of that, right? But is that really kind of the vibe as far as what recruits expect when they go to the whiteout?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I don't think anything is an auto commit in today's day and age, with all the other factors that make a kid commit, NIL being a huge one now. But what I will tell you is, in 2016 was extreme, like you said, but I'm not sure that class that we had in 2018 of Jahan Dotson, Micah Parsons, Pat Frymuth, all those guys, I don't think it comes together without that wideout. I remember the DMs and the group messages that I was in with guys who were considering going to Penn State after the wideout game, and everybody made their mind up that night. So that wideout is definitely a huge weapon in recruiting.
Were you all there in 2016?
A bunch of them were. I was supposed to be. Of course, the high school game that I played in, there was a bomb threat the day before. So our game got pushed, so I couldn't make the trip. And I'm like watching on my couch. Now, I'm a guy who grew up hating Ohio State. I'm from Ohio. I was raised a Cincinnati Bearcat fan. There's a little brother complex there. So I hated Ohio State. So I'm watching that game, and I'm hoping Ohio State loses. I actually fall asleep because Ohio State gets up. I'm tired. Wake up in the fourth quarter. I'm like, I don't know what happened here. And I'm all about it. So yeah.
That's brave that you actually are willing to admit that, though, because I have friends, students at the time that left the stadium, and they don't like to even admit to other people that they left before the game was over because it was raining. People didn't really cold.
It got real cold quick.
People didn't even want to really be there, and so the ones that stuck it out, they got the ultimate reward. Let's get into the pick'em. I don't want to worry you or anything, but Brandon last week actually did a pretty damn good job.
Good job.
I think he ended up about 13 out of 15 points, so he did pretty well.
Okay. All right. No pressure's on now. You say no pressure, and it's pressure now. Game today.
So basically, you're going to pick every game, just the winner of the game, and then at the end, I have some spreads that you're going to be able to choose from, and if you get that right, you get 2 additional bonus points. It's really a way for people to separate themselves, but also for people that maybe missed the week, they have a chance maybe to slowly catch up. So with that being said, let's get into it. Friday night, Wisconsin at Purdue. Purdue has been struggling a little bit lately. New coach there. Wisconsin also has a new coach, kind of struggling a little bit too in their own right. Lost to Wazoo a couple weeks ago. Didn't look great last week. Your thoughts on the Boilermakers and the Badgers?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, 2 teams that are struggling bad. But, I'm a Luke Fickell guy. I've seen how quick he can turn a program around with what he did at Cincinnati. And I know that he's the guy that knows his ball, too. Give me the Badgers over Purdue.
Shawn?
Same here. I'm going with the Badgers. Neither team has really started the year too hot, but I just think Wisconsin has better players, better coaching. Going with them.
You're believing in Wisconsin then to turn things around and continue to dominate that side of the division or the conference?
I think it happens sooner than later. I think Luke Fickell has a recipe that works.
Okay, let's go. Rutgers at Michigan. Rutgers is originally came out there 24-point underdogs. Any chance they go in there? They got a good defense, good running game. Any way they can shock the Wolverines?
Yeah, I'm not even going to entertain that conversation. The Wolverines win by a landslide. I appreciate Rutgers playing hard on the defensive side of the football, but Donovan Edwards is on his way, and he's pissed. So give me the Wolverines.
Yeah, I'm going Michigan, too. I hear what you're saying about Rutgers playing good defense, and Michigan hasn't looked good, I don't think, in any of their games, but too much for Rutgers.
I think Michigan wins. Oh, and by the way, I also am on Wisconsin. I don't know if I said that or not. I think Michigan wins, but I seriously think this is going to be closer than the experts think. Again, not financial advice, but 24 points. Think Rutgers can cover that. I really do. Use your money as you will, but just remember Cory's been making you guys money all year so far. Let's go Florida Atlantic. The Owls taking on Penn State's last opponent, Illinois, in Champaign. Illinois is going to be sticking with the same quarterback despite the interception issues. Well, first of all, what are your thoughts on Illinois coming out of the Penn State game? And then do you have them beating FAU?
Yeah, I think Illinois is tougher than people are probably giving them credit for right now. I'm going to take them over FAU. One thing that I liked about Illinois was their defensive line. I think they got a good unit up there. I don't see how FAU slows them down or is able to get any type of run game going against that group.
Yeah, a lot of times in games like this, trench play makes the difference, and that's where you really see the difference between a quality Big Ten line versus a team like FAU. So I'm gonna go with Illinois.
Anybody remember who the FAU head coach is right now?
Oh man,
Lane was, but I don't remember who came after him.
Former Texas coach Tom Herman.
Did not know that.
Nope, that's what I'm here for. Fun facts. Okay. Speaking of fun facts, Michigan State officially fires Mel Tucker. They host Maryland. Maryland's undefeated at this point. Michigan State just got embarrassed at home against the Huskies. I tried to maybe last week say, hey, wounded animal mode for the Spartans. Maybe they keep it close. They didn't. Are the brakes completely off, Aeneas? Are they completely just done? Is Maryland going to go in there and stomp the living Spartan out of them?
Yeah, I think Maryland wins that ball game pretty easily. One thing, you kind of alluded to, anytime you lose a head coach, especially the way Michigan State's losing their head coach, it's already tough to get 19 and 20-year-olds to focus and to be locked in on the things they need to. There's too much going on, too much chaos. Maryland wins the game.
Yep, we're in agreement. Michigan State is really bad. And, you lose your coach. I think Michigan State fears the turtle here, going with the Terps.
For a while, just to update you on the inside joke, Shawn and I always argued about who was better between Maryland and Michigan State. And I just want it to be known that I've willed the Terrapins to completely always be ahead of Michigan State, and that's my own doing. So not going to stop now. I'm going to go with Maryland to win this. I do agree with what Shawn usually says. I don't know when it's going to happen, but the Maryland falling off the cliff is going to happen at some point, but I don't think it's going to happen this week.
No, not this week. It's coming, though.
All right, Louisiana Tech and Nebraska. Nebraska's just really struggled to do very much at all. They were able to get the win last week, but Louisiana Tech's not very good. Are we all in the Cornhuskers here?
Yeah, I'm a Cornhusker guy. Oh, yeah.
Yep, they win again.
What makes you a Cornhusker guy? I gotta hear more about this.
Okay, yeah. So I'm a Matt Rule guy. I'm not gonna turn my back on Matt yet. But again, when all else fails to me, I just look at who Nebraska still has in the locker room. They're not a super duper talented team. They're still more talented. I think they find a way here.
Shawn, you were gonna say something there, or are you good on Nebraska?
No, I mean, I think Nebraska wins this one. Louisiana Tech isn't very good. I mean, the thing with Nebraska, I don't know how many more wins they have, but God, they're in the Big Ten West. They might just win the division. You never know. Right. Because I still have no idea who wins that division out there.
No, I think honestly, we obviously don't know what's going to happen with Penn State, Iowa, and what happens with Wisconsin, Purdue. But let's say Wisconsin loses that game. Let's say Penn State does beat Iowa. Who do you then look to in that division and really feel good about winning? It'd be difficult at that point.
I mean, I guess Iowa, but even them, I don't know.
Yeah.
That offense has a lot of injuries.
Yeah. Okay, a big one. Ohio State at Notre Dame. I think Ohio State's favored by 3-ish. Haven't looked amazing. Looked a little bit better last week against Western Kentucky. Notre Dame is Notre Dame. A little bit better offensively, I think, this Notre Dame team than the Ohio State team they faced last year. Aeneas, where are you going to go with this one?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the Irish here. I'm going to go with the Irish, and I'll tell you it's because I think Sam Hartman, I think Notre Dame has the better quarterback. Marcus Freeman, an Ohio State guy, a guy that recruited me at Cincinnati. I know his players are going to play hard for him. I think they've solved some of the problems they had offensively. They're a little bit more explosive. Run game has been pretty good. That back number 7, I'm blanking on his name. I've been really impressed with him as well. I think the Fighting Irish finally find a way to beat the Buckeyes. I'm not sure when the last win against the Buckeyes they had was. I don't know if we have that date, but it's been a long time. I think they do it Saturday.
Yeah. So, Aeneas, the way you feel about Ohio State growing up in Cincinnati, that's how I feel about Notre Dame. I mean, because Scranton, I don't know if you know this or not, it's about 95% Irish Catholic. I'm not even kidding you. So growing up as a Penn State fan here, I mean, it was like I was a Satan worshiper or something. And so that being said, I'm picking the Irish this week. I think Ohio State, I think this is the year that things don't just click against everybody else except Michigan. And I think Notre Dame's just got a better team, straight up. And it's on the road. I think Sam Hartman's for real, and I'm going to take the Irish.
If you were curious, the last time Notre Dame has beat Ohio State was October 31st, 1936. So
Been a little
before World War
Oh
II.
man.
Score of that game was 7-2.
Wow.
So,
High scoring.
Rival 6-4.
It does for sure. And they actually won the year before 18-13 in Columbus. So they had a 2-game winning streak, and then they haven't won since 1936. I'm also going to pick Notre Dame, but I don't feel nearly as good about it with you guys both taking Notre Dame. Better quarterback, and thing I've been going with lately is if you think it's about even, you go with the home team. So I'm going to go with the home team. I think maybe if Ohio State plays this game a month from now, they might win, but I don't know if they are prepared to get hit in the mouth. And so I'm going to go with Notre Dame to win this one. And probably be wrong because everyone else picked them
Everybody
too.
else is picking them. Yeah.
Another easy bet for you guys. Akron, the Fighting Joe Moorheads, taking on Indiana. I think that's at like 17.5. I think Akron actually probably covers that as well. Indiana, not a great football team. We're big Tom Allen fans, but they're just struggling a lot. We knew that going into the year they were going to struggle. Aeneas, do you think maybe the Moorheads find a way, pull this off?
The Moorheads don't find a way, but they keep it close. I think Akron is one of those teams that's going to come in there. They're going to believe they can do it. They've already played a Power 5 opponent in Kentucky. They're not going to be intimidated going and playing Indiana. They're going to go in there thinking they've got a shot to win. I do think Tom Herman and the Hoosiers figure it out in the end.
Shawn?
Yep, going with Indiana. Akron is not very good from what I've seen, and
Whoa.
I don't.
Whoa.
I'm Cory. I think our guy. I think he's got to start winning.
Don't be hating on the Zips.
And I love Jomo, but I just want to see him pick it up a little bit. And I don't think they have what it takes to take the Hoosiers down. So I'm going to go with Indiana.
They played Kentucky. They also played Temple. And so haven't really had a chance yet to kind of get some momentum. Would have liked to see them actually score a touchdown against Kentucky, but that's besides the point. They did beat Morgan State for whatever that's worth. I'm also going to take Indiana, but this might be one of the few games that Indiana wins this year. But again, I am putting my own money down that Akron will cover that one. Minnesota, Northwestern. Minnesota coming off that loss last week to North Carolina. Northwestern just came off that loss to Duke. They're both disappointing teams already this year. Really just kind of battling for the bottom of the Big Ten West, which is saying something. Gophers, Wildcats, where are you at, Aeneas?
Listen, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm excited to pick either one of these football teams because I know whatever I say right here. I'm gonna go with the Gophers. I think they figure it out. Tumultuous offseason for the Northwestern Wildcats over there. Some adjustments being made, so I'm gonna go with the Gophers.
Yeah, I got Minnesota as well. Northwestern is probably the only team. Well, God, Minnesota's probably joining them that I don't think have any shot to win the Big Ten West. So I've got to go with the Gophers here.
I'm taking the Wildcats.
Okay.
I really am.
I hope they do win too because it helps Penn State out.
It does help Penn State out potentially. They're at home. Don't forget what they did at home last time. They put up 38 points on UTEP. So I just go out there, pretend Minnesota's UTEP, and you'll be fine. And I don't quarterback's very good. He wasn't very good in a whiteout. We kind of gave him a pass, and then he hasn't really got any better. Why not? Northwestern's not going to have a chance in many games. This is one of the games where they're going to have a chance. Why not? I don't. That's not great reasoning, but I'm going to go with Northwestern. And also, their coach is from like the Dakotas West and gets the job done. I don't know.
Inner Midwest.
Yeah. So cover. Don't say anything. But otherwise, do you have your double down pick?
I've got my pick.
Okay. That was good. You ever see those things on TikTok where like if you don't say anything, I'll give you $100? I feel like that was one of those things. Like don't say anything right now. And anyway, okay. Well, with that being said, let's talk about it. Iowa's coming into town. They're losing like 40% of their production with a couple injuries at their tight end and running back position. Still have a very strong defense. Penn State's Penn State. I'm going to stop talking and just let you break down what you think, what you've seen so far, and then drop your score prediction.
Yeah, I'll give you my analysis so far, man. You know, you mentioned it with the tight end and running back situation that Iowa's facing. You know, they're a tough team. They're a team offensively that likes to run a lot of stretch action with their run game. I think they still try to lean on that. I just think the Penn State is equipped to handle the things that Iowa does best. With that stretch action, it's important to have athletic D tackles who are able to get vertical and close off run game that way. I think Penn State has plenty of that. And one thing that I'll say now that I'm not in the program is that, you know, whether or not the players will say it or Coach Franklin will say it, I think it's still personal. The 2021 game, to me, the way they booed those kids that were hurt, you know, pouring their heart out, trying to make things happen. The situation with Taquan Roberson going in the game, not playing well, and getting, you know, lit up on social media by Iowa fans. You know, to me, this game is personal. It's at home. It's a whiteout. I think we see a bag of tricks offensively from Mike Yurcich and the gang that maybe we haven't seen to this point in the season. I love Penn State to cover, and I think it's going to happen. So,
About to run through a brick wall just hearing you talk about this. It's Wednesday night, and I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. You hit it on the head, man. I'm fired up about it. I think it's personal too. I don't know if anyone's ever going to admit it. Maybe after the fact, or maybe after they put up 100 points. I don't really know. But I think they're going to try it too. And I always think I like whiteouts because is the year before you got to town, but the 2017 Michigan game was maybe it was my sophomore year, but it was a party on the field. Just the whole day, whole night was a party. And that's just the kind of environments that I love to be in, and I love for the players to be in that too. So I'm excited for the game. Very, very awesome and excited to have you on the show. Just fantastic talking to you today.
Really appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's a ton of fun. You guys do great work. You've got a big fan in me. Keep doing your thing, and hopefully I can come join you guys again one day.
Absolutely. You are more than welcome to come on. So we appreciate you. Have a safe travel back to State College, and hopefully we'll be celebrating a victory come Sunday.
No doubt about it. All right, fellas. Appreciate you guys.
Awesome. See you later.
Thank you, Aeneas.
See you.
I've disappeared.
The invisible man, Cory Lestochi.
I'm just gone. Oh, there I am.
There he is.
So
that was fun,
dude. Back to back, and it's not Hack's fault because he had bad Wi-Fi, but back to back, just fantastic interviews with Brandon Bell and Aeneas Hawkins. I don't believe that episode has dropped yet. It's only Wednesday, so probably not. But that episode 4, if you haven't checked out the Lions Den yet, highly recommend it. They had Theo Johnson on last week. They're going to have Curtis Jacobs on this week. They've already recorded it. The previous week, if you haven't even watched the Keandre Lambert-Smith one, that one's really good too. Just fantastic. And like I said, he's doing a really good job hosting that stuff. So smart job by State Media to get him on board because he's just got a lot of great personality. And I don't know, Shawn, at least for me, it just seems like he is talking to us as if he's talked to us before, and it's just very natural. You know what I mean? It seems like we've been hanging out for a long time with him. And tonight is the first time, full disclosure, we've ever spoken with him.
Yeah, very much so. And even, I mean, you guys can't see, but before we even start, like, we're just talking like we're old friends. So, I mean, that's kind of, and I think for you guys as the listeners, that's what you're looking for. That's what makes a good podcast. I mean, ultimately, yeah, you're here for the material, but it's the personalities that really make the show, in my opinion. So, yeah, we loved having him on, and we're going to have him back.
Yeah, I'd say so. Pick'em just finished. If you haven't done your Pick'em, it is in the description below. It's on Twitter as well. Make sure you get your Pick'em in. I think we're only at like 20 something. We're usually ending up around 36. We've actually, Shawn, had over 60 people do the Pick'em so far, at least 1 week. So fantastic. We are actually working with Mercury right now to figure out what those prizes are going to be. There is some new Lions Den merch out. I saw. I haven't looked too far into it, but we might be able to get some merch from maybe the other shows or something like that. We'll see. So, anyway, let's move on to final thoughts on Illinois. Put out the film breakdown around 8:30 last night, so that's on Twitter. Maybe I'll go retweet it right now just so it's a little bit higher up in our feed. But that went out last night. Got a chance. Really, I actually looked at a lot of the film over like the course of a couple of days. It wasn't just last night that I put that together. But I definitely got to look more at this game than I did for, like, say, the Delaware game. So I apologize we didn't get one out for the Delaware game. I just didn't think it was sufficient enough to put it out. But the Illinois film breakdown is now out on Twitter.
So upon looking back, I wanted to ask you this because once again, you did a great job with the film. Check it out on Twitter or X or whatever. What do you think? How do you think Drew played watching it live versus watching it back?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when I watched it live, it definitely seemed like he was a more disrupted than maybe he was, because he was throwing off of his back foot, sometimes not even out of discomfort, but because I don't want to call it lazy, but because he can get away with it. And in previous years, when we saw Sean Clifford throw off his back foot, that was because he was disrupted. He was flappable. He was flapped. What's the proper?
Flapped. Yeah, flappable.
If you're unflappable, you became flappable. I don't know. I will say this though. He was a little bit more out of rhythm, and I don't necessarily think it's his fault. I'll stress this again. Those first couple of drives really kind of dictate, especially for a young quarterback, getting in rhythm and gaining confidence. Now, I think he's very poised for, a true sophomore in his first road start. But at the end of the day, he's still a true sophomore in his road start. And it was very important to get him off to a good start. And that didn't really happen. And that was for a lot of different reasons. But one of the bigger ones is because we couldn't catch the football early on. And so expect Penn State to try to get him some easy, quick throws yet again, to get him more in rhythm. Because when there was a difference. You could tell when he was in rhythm versus when he wasn't in rhythm. And so watching the film over, it wasn't perfect. He did miss some things, but overall it wasn't a bad performance.
Watching it live, I think you would have been surprised that he threw below 50%, that was his completion percentage, but I mean, it was. And yeah, if you had a couple drops, yeah, okay, maybe it just goes above 50%. But I mean, the reality is when you play quarterback, you're going to have guys that drop the ball sometimes. And that's just part of the deal. You're also hopefully going to get receivers that bail you out of a couple bad throws.
Yeah.
And I don't think that really happened necessarily on Saturday. But it was his first road start. I know James Franklin has been trying to kind of get away from that. And he made reference to that in his press conference saying, all the firsts for Drew are out of the way. He started a game on the road. He started a first home game in a quasi whiteout. It was like a quasi whiteout in the first game. And yeah, so all the firsts are gone. Now, in my view, as a fan, his biggest tests are still coming. And well, I mean, that's obvious. But first game against Ohio State, first game against Michigan. And I will say to the end, like if Sean Clifford had that Ohio State win on his resume, I think he's thought of differently among Penn State fans. And that's going to be a big challenge for him going into that environment and getting a win. But overall, I mean, I know there's been some people like worried about Drew, and I think it's mostly national people. I'm mostly fine with how he played on Saturday. I really am. I'm happy to turn the ball over. I mean, right, that was
exactly.
If you worry about one thing about making your first road start, it would be that.
Right. He didn't turn the ball over compared to 3-pick JJ. I think it was PFF.
Boom, roasted.
I think PFF said that Drew Aller's adjusted completion percentage for drops. I think there were 6 drops on the day. It ended up being 66% after the drops.
Wow. He had 6 drops?
6'4", whatever the case. Maybe that includes the knockdowns. I don't really know, but
Okay.
I don't know how they adjust it. But
Yeah.
I think it came out to around, maybe it was 62%, whatever. It was in the 60s. So if that makes you feel a little bit better about his play, whatever. I don't really care that much about it. We talked about his completion percentage before. Let's see how it responds for the rest of the year. I'm gonna, as of now, take that as an outlier. And if that's not always the case, okay, fine. But right now, I'm not too concerned about it. His completion percentage is still 67% for the year.
Pretty good. I'll take it.
Other things I wanted to mention. Thought the defense did really well against the run. Showed the one play of Chop Robinson blowing up the trap, pulling guard. He's done that multiple times. He did it against West Virginia. We showed that. Adisa Isaac did some really good things against the run as well. Just in general, and for the blog, he came out with their film breakdown this morning, maybe late last night, and they highlighted some of the Buck sweep stuff that I was talking about, and they showed that Penn State did do a better job. It wasn't a perfect job, but they did a better job with it. And I try to tell you, it was kind of like Illinois was trying to run Michigan's offense in 2022, and they just weren't able to do it as well. Now, it wasn't perfect, and would maybe a Michigan team with a better offensive line and better running backs be able to exploit that a little bit? Probably. There's one run that maybe Blake Corum takes that to the house on that one Buck sweep early on. But overall, I thought they did a really good job closing the gaps and filling the holes correctly and then making the tackle. Now, that wasn't always the case, but we saw the number at 62 yards rushing allowed. I wanted to see if that was actually a fair estimate, and I think that's a fair number to say that they earned that 62. Sometimes you got a bunch of sacks and whatever else happened. I think that number is a true number as far as highlighting how the game actually went.
Yeah, for the blog, he did. If he did have a good review on that, and he focused particularly on the defense. And a term that he used a lot was building, a wall along the side on those sweeps, with your linebackers and everybody going where they're supposed to, with the corners coming down. And it's a thing of beauty when you watch it and when it works. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot that was made out of the run defense that just didn't really exist. I mean, the first drive, did we get gashed a couple times? We did. The first drive wasn't pretty, but I will remind people that happens a lot on first drives. When you're first getting into a game, and keep in mind, it's 11 a.m., you're on the road, could be a little sleepy. Sometimes you need to be punched in the mouth a little bit to wake up. And I think they, in a way, needed that. And after that, they were pretty much locked in the whole way. Were there some ugly moments? Yeah, the touchdown where the running back runs over Keaton Ellis and somebody else. Yeah, okay, that was a bad moment. But outside of that, yeah, we gave up a long run on a broken play on a 3rd and 22, and the guy got 20 yards. And there's the rushing for the day. I mean, I'm not going to
right there.
Yeah, I'm not really going to complain all that. I'm not really going to complain at all about that, especially when you're playing against a team whose bread and butter is to run the ball. So,
right.
I think there's it's much ado about mostly nothing.
Yeah. Just sticking with the defense for a second. Safeties, I think, need to play a little bit better. If I had to pick right now, and it's no knock on the other ones, I think KJ Winston's playing the best. I think he's playing the best. And then probably Jalen Reed after that, to be honest with you. Keaton Ellis and Zakee Wheatley aren't far behind them. I think Zakee Wheatley actually might set the edge better when they ask him to in that position. He did that a couple times pretty well. But I think KJ Winston's their best safety. And we thought that might be the case. We didn't think it was going to happen this quickly in the year, but he's playing some really good football. I think there's value to have Keaton Ellis out there from a leadership and a been there, done that perspective. And I think they're going to continue to rotate all the guys. I thought Jalen Reed actually is continuing to improve in the pass rushing when he's asked to blitz. And so I wanted to mention that. And then the corners, Shawn, Johnny Dixon's really good at football. Just really good at football. I don't want to say, well, I'm not trying to say he's better than Kalen King, but I think he so far to this point has had a better year than Kalen King. His footwork's good. Uh, his ability to jump the routes, but also know what the receiver's trying to set up is impressive. His ability to blitz is impressive, and he's been pretty good in the run game. So very impressed, very happy where Johnny Dixon is. Now, does he maybe get it a little bit more freedom to run around than Kalen King? I think so. And maybe he's put in more opportunities to splash, but very, very happy where Johnny Dixon is. Very happy with all the corners. King, Dixon, Hardy, obviously, we talked about him a lot on Monday's show. And then Cam Miller, someone we were a little bit questionable on coming into the year, did some good things, not just with the interception, but also coming up in the run game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the overall strength of this team so far this year has been the secondary. And I don't think that's much of a surprise to people. Kalen King, I mean, right now teams are afraid to throw at him, and that's really the second straight year the teams are afraid to throw at him. And last year he had Joey Porter Jr. on the other side. And I just watched Joey Porter Jr. play on Monday Night Football. So that shows you about how much people respect Kalen King. I mean, he had a couple hiccups in run defense last week, but nothing that you're going to be, nothing that's going to keep you up at night. Yeah, Johnny Dixon again continues to elevate his play, and he built on what he built on. He built on what he did last year, and he's playing at an all Big Ten level right now, and I was hoping he would be, because I did think he'd have to raise his game up a little bit to be that second corner, and he's done that. Daquan Hardy, we saw why we missed him on Saturday. A guy with a ton of experience. He's done it all, seen it all. He's played well. He's also struggled at times. He was lights out on Saturday. Cam Miller, very promising guy. I was a little bit worried about corner depth going into the year. Feel a lot better about it now. Seeing Cam Miller playing, he has been so far worth the hype that the coaching staff has given him. Safeties, yeah, I would agree with you. I think KJ Winston's played the best. It's no mistake he's starting. Deserves to start, and as a pretty young guy in a group that's very experienced. And yeah, he's done well in pass defense. We knew he could hit, but he could also cover at a pretty high level from what we've seen. Jalen Reed, again, same, similar thing. We knew he could get it done in rush defense. I think he's been good in coverage. Zakee Wheatley, yeah, he could. I agree with you. He good in rush defense. I know there's a near interception that he would have liked to have to be and he would have been one of those 5 guys that won co defensive player of the week. And yeah, Keaton Ellis is that steady senior back there. So yeah, I think you have to be extremely impressed with how these the secondary is played, and if anything, maybe they've exceeded expectations so far this season.
Yeah, let's the only other thing I really want to say about Illinois game, I thought Mike Yursich actually called a pretty good game. There's, besides maybe that, I guess it would have been the first offensive series in the red zone, I thought he did a pretty good job. There's some subtle things he did. I mentioned one on Monday's show, using Newton as the read option, the actual read, even though he was lined up in the 3 tech. That's something we hadn't seen them do before, and that's something Kansas did against Illinois. And they didn't show that until the second half, but was curious that they were going to implement that because Kansas had a lot of success with it, and so did Penn State. I'd be curious if other teams decided to do that to Illinois moving forward.
I think teams have to do that more with the other team's best player if they're a defensive lineman, like freeze them. I don't know why they don't do that more.
That one pass to Nick Singleton, kind of like a screenplay. Again, I'm gonna just think about that Michigan game last year, and always kind of think about making sure that Nick Singleton is behind the line of scrimmage on those screenplays, because there was one where I think Ty Warren cracked somebody, he was behind the line of scrimmage. Liam Clifford in the West Virginia game, behind the line of scrimmage. And then off of that screen, on a different screen, they threw it out to Nick Singleton, but they had Ty Warren coming around the other side there. They could actually do a little throwback to the other side if Nick Singleton was covered. They had a bunch of blockers ready for Ty Warren on the other side. So something to kind of pay attention to there. But Hunter Norzad, I think I maybe mentioned him on Monday. I thought Hunter Norzad also played really well. But those are kind of my final thoughts there on what I saw.
Yeah, Hunter Norzad, one player of the week on the offensive side of the ball. So obviously James Franklin's thought highly of him as well.
He agrees with us.
Yeah, and hey, great minds here. Yeah, I think the receivers, they saw better days. But Harrison Wallace did practice tonight, did want to say that, and we missed him on Saturday. So we do, hopefully he'll be back in the starting lineup. I think James Franklin said him and Omari Evans have the notorious bumps and bruises. So
that's been like a newer thing, right?
Yeah, everybody's got bumps and bruises, including people who medically retire.
Where did that just come out of? Like randomly? Now the bumps and bruises is the thing to say.
Everybody's got them.
It's not even sometimes, I think, related to injury, but they have bumps and bruises.
Yeah.
You mentioned Omari Evans. Well, I think we have one fan question tonight on Omari Evans, so we'll wait there. But if you're good, we can shift our focus over to Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa. Let me go to
This isn't heaven.
This screen.
This is Iowa.
And we
never seen that movie, actually. What's that? Field of Dreams?
Never seen Field of Dreams?
Never seen it.
You know what? I'm gonna tell you to watch it, but you haven't watched yet, like the last 6 movies I've told you to watch. So I'm done with you on your
Very fair. I know James Earl Jones is in it.
Let me get
And Kevin Costner, I believe.
Let me get the fun facts up here. How does that look? Does that look okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk Iowa. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see, but if not, this was from Late Kick Live. Actually, I pulled this stat from. They've lost 4 straight against ranked opponents, and they've lost by 24.8 points per game, which is kind of crazy. Did not know that.
Yeah, because they're notorious for knocking off really good teams. That's kind of what they're. Are we the last one they beat?
I almost don't believe this stat. I probably should have stat checked it beforehand.
They lost to Michigan in the title game.
How bad was that?
They got obliterated.
Okay, so maybe it is right.
And then, God, there aren't a whole lot of ranked teams in the West. So
who do they play in the bowl game? They got obliterated. Or no, they won that, didn't they?
I think they won Kentucky? Their most recent bowl game. Yeah.
Yeah, but Kentucky wasn't ranked.
Yeah, and they didn't even have their quarterback. So
I'm gonna say their stats right, but now I
think it probably is. But that's a lot of points that they lost by. So
yeah.
And then they got killed by Ohio State last year too.
Okay. Yeah, they did get killed. So there's 2 right there.
Yeah. I believe it.
Okay, we're going to believe it. It's a kind of a crazy stat when you think about it, because they usually don't give up 25 points per game, period.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, if your offense is so bad that the defense is on the field the whole time, I mean, I think that's a lot. I think that's a lot of what happens. And a good defense, yeah, Spencer Petras is going to be facing a lot of 3-and-outs.
Yeah, Spencer Petras. I will say this: Cade McNamara is better than him, but I don't know by how much. But he is better. You know what? Funny stat that I wanted to mention here. Last year, they finished last in the Big Ten in rushing, which I think if I told many people that, they'd be very surprised by that. But that's an insane stat to me, that they couldn't even run the ball. Like an Iowa football team couldn't run the ball in the Big Ten. That just is crazy to me.
In the Big Ten West, too.
Right. Tory Taylor, their punter, he had 82 punts last year. 82 punts. I don't know how many punts Barney and Moore had last year, but I'm wondering if it's twice as many.
It was not 82. I could tell you that. Yeah, I think the average is probably somewhere in the 40s because you play 13 games if you include the bowl. Your team probably punts if you're good offense. What 3 to 4 times a game? So yeah, you're probably in the 40s somewhere.
And they punted twice the amount. So, and then
Boring
probably not a
football,
big
man.
deal as of yet, but they are 117th in the country right now in plays of more than 10 yards. I think they're at like 30 something plays. If you move that back to like 20 yards, Penn State's actually not that better as far as 20 plus yards from scrimmage plays. But I thought the 10 plus yards is actually maybe more important because you can just pick up a couple first downs here. You can string something together. They haven't been able to do that. They've had to work pretty hard for their yardage. And so if they're looking for a methodical performance, I don't know if this Iowa offense is going to necessarily give you that. Any other? Oh, I guess we should also say right here. Then now we butchered his name, or at least I butchered his name on Monday's show. Tight end Luke Lachey is out, and Lachey is not how it is spelled. By the way, I'll just say that he's out for the season. Kirk Ferentz didn't really have that much else to say. I thought his press conference was actually really boring, but
You're kidding.
It was really boring. And he says that running back Caleb Johnson, has a leg injury, a lower leg injury, and the other running back as well has an injury to his leg. I don't necessarily 100% believe that those two are 100% ruled out because that press conference was on Monday, maybe Tuesday. And so I feel like that's pretty early. Johnson has an ankle injury, and he was able to go last week. So unless it's a severely high sprain that occurred all of a sudden, I feel like it's a little early to rule him out. So I would say doubtful for both those two running backs, but I think I know everyone else is saying they're ruled out completely, but I'm not ready to 100% say that. I feel like it's just maybe a little soon, Shawn.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think they're rushing off. I mean, I don't think they've been 100% really the whole season. I think this is something that's been lingering. What sticks
For
out
Johnson,
to me,
for sure.
yes, yeah, Johnson specifically. What sticks out to me, they're 18th in scoring defense, 31st in total defense, and 40th in rush defense, 32nd in pass defense. So those are pretty good numbers because there's 130 or so FBS teams. And then you look at the offense, 119th in total offense, 121st in passing offense, 73rd in total offense, 72nd in rushing offense. So, I mean, those numbers are not going to get it done if you're playing against a team like if you're playing against a team that has Penn State's defense. Also, against Penn State, you're going to have to score some points. Now, I feel like you could say this outside of 2020, outside of COVID year where we lost. You could probably say this about almost every other team that Penn State has played, every other game where Penn State's played Iowa. But I mean, the game is usually always close. Since Penn State joined the Big Ten in 1993, Penn State and Iowa are 11-11. So it's been a 50-50 split for since 93. And guys, like, this is usually a dogfight, and I'm just letting you guys know that up front. Now, does Penn State usually play better at Beaver Stadium? Absolutely. But I mean, when you look at the stats coming in, look kind of ugly, look a little lopsided, but there's something about Iowa where they just stick around like a rock in my shoe.
We'll say James Franklin is 4-2 against Iowa, and one of those losses was COVID. One of those losses was in 2021 when Sean Clifford, and well, you know that story. So take that for what you will.
Question for you, Cory.
Before COVID, Franklin was doing really well against Iowa.
He was. Question.
Yes.
Is Iowa Penn State's biggest rival in the Big Ten?
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. Not a rival, but the closest thing to a rival, I would say, yeah.
Hashtag unrivaled. Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would view us as a rival either, but like, you look at the success we've had since we joined the Big Ten. I mean, it's been equal. Now, Cory brings up 100% true. Franklin's 4-2 against Kirk Ferentz. It was Joe actually who struggled the most with Kirk Ferentz. He lost got 6 or 7 straight in the early 2000s against Kirk. Him and Lloyd Carr, Joe just had a lot of trouble with. So that's where a lot of the losses came. But I mean, historically speaking, yeah, this is usually a great game, and it's usually close. And just something about seeing Iowa on your schedule. I don't know. For me, in all off season, it's funny. Like I was like, Iowa will be all right. I mean, it's at Beaver Stadium, and closer I get, I gotta be honest, more nervous I'm getting.
Wanted to mention the weather right now on AccuWeather.
That's part of the reason.
Well, right now it's looking better. Now it's officially just saying mostly cloudy, rain gear may be needed, but it's down to 25% chance of rain on Saturday. So we're getting
Pretty
that
good.
was at like 61%, say a Monday, and it's not supposed to rain on Friday, and it's not supposed to rain on Sunday. So I feel like it's not like the storm's going to hit no matter what. It just depends on when. It seems like Penn State might be able to luck out. Well, not just Penn State, but the fans included might be able to luck out there. Obviously, it's only Wednesday, so I think usually you have a pretty good idea by Friday, but I still don't even really trust Thursdays. So I wanted to mention that. Let's talk Iowa's offense first. If I can. There we go. We mentioned the 40% of production so far this year is missing. Also wanted to mention they've given up, I think, 6 sacks already on the year, maybe even more than that. They're 71st allowed in sacks allowed. Something to pay attention to there, just because, again, Penn State just had Aeneas Hawkins on talking about having that crowd behind you and how much better it is to rush the passer. Not doing great on third downs either. 108th in the country right now in third down conversions. And again, I know we're only a quarter of the way through the season, but Iowa really hasn't played that many good teams, and the numbers don't look great. And people are like, oh, they played Iowa State. Iowa State, not a good football team. And then Cade McNamara has the quad injury. Been recovering from that. I'm not sure if he necessarily took a step back last week, but he's definitely not 100%. He went 9 of 19, had 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 interceptions against Western Michigan. So not a dazzling performance by any stretch of the imagination. I was on the camp as soon as they went and got him that this is like the most Iowa thing to do is go get Cade McNamara, because I never thought he was that good to begin with. And I thought it was the players around him at Michigan that made him look really good. And he doesn't really have very much wiggle, especially compared to J.J. McCarthy. And if he has that quad injury, I'm not sure how mobile at all he's going to be. And it will be interesting to see if Penn State comes after him early to see it and test his mobility. You look at when West Virginia was effective, it was when Garrett Green was able to get out of the pocket. Even Altemeyer at times was able to get out of the pocket and do things with his life. I'm not really sure, Shawn, if McNamara is going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think McNamara is going to be pretty much a sitting duck back there. And, I'm somebody who I think I probably like I like McNamara's game a little bit more than Cory. But I will say, was he helped dramatically by that Michigan offense? Of course. Yeah, I mean, he had if not the best offensive line in the country. He had 2 of the better, or 3 of the, at the time, better running backs in the country. So yeah, that's why they made the playoffs in 2021. But still, Cade was the quarterback on that team, and I think that counts for something. He has not started the year particularly hot. He's got 4 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and that is not a good lineup he's gone against. Western Michigan is a pretty terrible team. Iowa State, they lost to the Ohio Bobcats, as we mentioned last episode. So, and they only won by 10 against Utah State. So it has not been a murderer's row, and Cade has not played well. And then you factor in the injuries. I mean, it's an offense already that didn't have a whole lot of fireworks, and you lose your top two running backs, you lose your best tight end. I do think Eric All is very good at times. He's going to be a guy we're going to have to deal with, but I think it says a lot about your team outside of Georgia, who has Brock Bowers, where the number one guy you're worried about is a tight end. So I think that says a lot.
Right. Their third string running back, if you're curious, is LaShawn Williams. He actually had a really good day against Western Michigan. 12 rushes for 145 yards, and then he had 2 catches for 27 yards and a touchdown. So he did do some good things in relief, but we'll see kind of where that running back position is. Obviously, Iowa's going to have to try to run the football, shorten that game a little bit. That's one thing interesting about what Kirk Ferentz said in his press conference. He basically was like, we got to make it a 60-minute game first. And once we make it a 60-minute game, then we can go try to win it. And to me, that just like is the most Iowa way to put like they're better than us. Like that's basically what he said.
That's Iowa
right?
football in a nutshell, though, against better teams. That's what they do. That's what they try to do.
Right. And it's just like not even hiding it, right? Like, yeah, they have a really, really talented football team. We gotta go in there, not make any mistakes, make it a 60-minute game, and then find a way to maybe win it.
Yeah.
Receivers, they claim their receivers on the outside are better than they have been in the past. I don't know how much I'm necessarily believing that.
Maybe they're like Charlie Jones. They'll get really good if they transfer out.
Like Nico Regini, he was there in 2021, and he's okay. I don't know if he's insanely good or they really like Seth Anderson and what he's capable of doing in the future. And they're excited about the future, but I think a lot of the other guys are really young. And I'm just not going to sit here and say like Penn State secondary is going to be super worried about Iowa's wide receivers until they prove me otherwise. Just to give you an idea, Lachey led the team in catches with 10 so far, followed by Eric All with 7. And then Anderson has 4, Regini has 5, and then LaShawn Williams, running back I just mentioned, he has 5. So, and everyone else is in, below that. So they haven't got very many touches yet this year. And so I think it's a question mark. I think they do have upside in the Big Ten West, but I'm not really sure if I see them as a weapon on Saturday.
Yeah, not against this Penn State secondary. I just don't see it. Like I said, I think Eric All could give us some matchup problems. I think that's a possibility. Nico Regani, he had the go-ahead touchdown against us in 2021. That's where, as soon as I saw his name, I was like, oh, that's the guy. And Seth Anderson, he's a guy that they think they could develop into a weapon. But yeah, there's nobody there are no receivers that really scare me all that much when our top 2 corners are Kalen King and Johnny Dixon. I feel really good about how we match up with them there. And that could be their Achilles heel in this game, is our secondary.
Right, because I think you have to take shots because you can't just let Penn State load the box. But I just, it comes back to the same thing over and over, right? Like if Penn State's defense is playing really good, what do you honestly do? Seriously, like what do you do? And so you kind of have to get creative. You got to find different ways. You got to find matchups you really like. And you thought maybe Lachey would be that matchup you like because Penn State's linebackers did struggle at times in coverage. I think they've actually done a better job this year. So maybe you go back to Eric All and you try to find him in some opportunities, but that you got to find matchups that you like and try to exploit them that way. If you try to attack an entire group, you're not gonna really like your chances there. We can move over to defense if you're ready.
Yeah, I mean, let's do it. I don't think this offensive line. I think we talked about it a little bit. It's not your older brother's Iowa offensive line. I think they're the guy. I forget his name. He was on the Lions 247 pod. who covers Iowa football. He said that he thinks this offensive line is a little bit better. That is a little better than the one last year and even the one in 2021. So take that for what it's worth. I don't think either of those units, especially last season, I don't think it was particularly strong. But yeah, I think it's going to be an improved offensive line, but to be able to deal with what Penn State brings in that front seven, I think they're going to be in for a challenging day.
Yeah, offensive guard Connor Colby and offensive tackle Mason Richmond, two guys to maybe watch there that we highlighted actually this past summer. But I agree. I don't think they've really pushed people around. They're not necessarily running the ball very effectively compared to Iowa standards. And they're not necessarily protecting Cade McNamara very much either. So that being said, their tight ends can block really well too. So they get compliments by their tight ends being able to block well. Pulled this stat out, updated it from the summer based off of so far this year, talking about Iowa's defense now. When Iowa holds their opposing quarterback for less than 60% completion percentage, they are 21-1. So didn't do the numbers on, what the record is if they're over that, because that's a little bit harder to do. But if they hold Drew Aller to less than 60% passing in previous years, that they're 21-1 right now, which is pretty insane.
Big J journalism right there, Cory. Nice job.
I don't think I can take credit for all that. I think that stat originally came from College Football News, and then I just updated it. So I won't take full credit there. But what's interesting about that to me, Shawn, is I know we talked about the adjusted completion percentage from last week, but Drew Aller's under that 60% technically for this stat to be true. So you're trying to think right now, like, okay, based off of that, and I don't know who that one loss is either, if that would have been true journalism. But you would like to see, obviously, Penn State complete more than 60% of their passes on Saturday, and they'd feel probably better about this. So just an interesting stat there, because I think it just goes to show Iowa wants chaos and they want inconsistency. And when they get that, that's really when their defense begins to shine. They haven't got a bunch of turnovers this year, but obviously because they play so much zone, I think it actually helps them get a lot of interceptions off of tips and stuff, because everyone's looking at the quarterback versus man coverage. And also, I swear, to this day, I think Kirk Ferentz has sold his soul to the devil to get more turnovers, because they get more tipped pass interceptions than anybody I've ever seen in my life. And so they are opportunistic as far as converting on those. So you got to give them credit there. They score a lot for a defense, and they've already got a safety this year. But wanted to throw that stat out there, Shawn, because I really think it's kind of an important stat. Like, you kind of maybe throw the ball less, whatever the case may be, find a way to have higher than a 60% completion percentage on Saturday.
Yeah, that's how Iowa has been successful for all of Kirk Ferentz's tenure. I'd take a couple of years out where they weren't very good, but they are led by their defense. They're led by making you mess up. And a lot of what they do on defense, like you said, they sit back in zone and they kind of wait for you to mess up. They want you to get greedy and, try to challenge those two high safeties. And they're very good at making you pay for mistakes and getting an interception, giving their offense, who usually isn't very good, a short field. Complimentary football. Like, that's kind of what Kirk Ferentz has been. He also uses special teams. It seems like, they always have a blocked punt at a key time, or, it always feels like their specialists are good. Their kickers and punters are good. So they just always complement each other very well. Their units do a good job of complementing each other really well. They tend to really maybe the offense doesn't always do a good job of complementing the defense, but again, if you could just give them a short field, you're not asking your offense to do very much. We have Cooper DeJean on the highlighted there. He really impresses me. I think he had 3 pick sixes last year. Right there. Don't even have to do anything on offense. There's a touchdown. And that's who they've been. And if they want a chance to win this game, I think they're going to need plays like that. They're going to need to try, maybe not even necessarily a pick six, but give Cade McNamara short fields. Try to get Drew Aller to make mistakes. Try to get him impatient. And that's something that I talked about on the Big Ten TED podcast that I was on a couple of weeks back. Drew Aller hasn't been baited into making mistakes yet. And I said at the time, we only played West Virginia and Delaware. The talent on the defenses hasn't really picked up yet. Well, this one will. And if he gets flustered, if he gets frustrated, I want to see how he responds.
Yeah. A lot of good stuff there. I know it sounds silly, but the first quarter is going to be such an important quarter. Fox had that graphic that showed that Penn State had scored a touchdown in every first quarter for a long time, or for a while. I don't remember how long it was. Weren't able to do that against Illinois. And again, I think it affected the rhythm of the offense. And I know that they played complimentary football when it was all said and done, but it wasn't very complimentary at first. And I think you really got to make sure you get off to a good start. And the same token, Iowa's going to have to try to get off to a good start, because I just don't know how this Iowa team comes back to win this game. There is an avenue where Penn State can get down 14-0 and come back and win. I don't know if that exists for Iowa in this game. Moving on there, this from last year, they allowed 13 points or less on their defense 10 out of the 13 times last season. So suffocating defense at times. And like you said, willing to give up the short stuff, not going to want to give things up over the top. We mentioned this on Monday. Kind of the opposite of what we saw from Illinois. Not that Illinois always does that, but they played a lot of man coverage. They played, let's get pressure on Drew Aller, and similar to what West Virginia did. I thought the receivers did a better job getting open in the West Virginia game versus the Illinois game. And obviously there's some drops and stuff too. But I'm very curious, because Iowa does not like to do that typically. Are they going to come out of their fold a little bit to try that? Or do they do what you say? We're going to play back and just see how patient Drew Aller really is. I'm very interested to see that chess match.
Yeah, me too. And Mike Yurcich, I think if there's one game that he would have liked to have a healthy quarterback all the way through, was that Iowa game in 2021. Because even though Cliff did throw 2 interceptions early, I mean, he was dissecting them on every other drive. And he was off to a hot start. And, Mike Yurcich is calling a brilliant game. And I think they're going to try to recreate that magic that they had. And, I mean, in my view, the overall talent is better on the offense now than it was in 2021, not just at quarterback, but at every position except probably wide receiver. And I think they're going to be, they could be in a position to do it. Now, I said on a previous podcast, I don't know if it was last week or not, if I were playing this Penn State offense, I would probably try to do a lot of what Iowa does and try to get Drew Aller to make a mistake, try to get him a little flustered. And you don't have to, that doesn't necessarily have to be with bringing a ton of blitzes. It could just be sitting back in zone, maybe confuse him a little bit, tip a pass, pick the ball off. So that's what I was going to be trying to do on Saturday. And we'll see if it's successful or not.
and Illinois did have success pre-snap to post-snap in confusing Drew Aller. There was moments of that where Penn State was basically running routes into things that weren't a good look because they were just confused. So that definitely happened. And I expect Iowa to do something similar. So I regardless of how you decide to skin the cat, you're still going to try to confuse Drew Aller, regardless of what coverage you end up settling into. The defense from last year for Iowa, they do lose quite a bit of pieces from the secondary. from the linebacker spot and even from the defensive line. Van Ness, Campbell, and Riley Moss, really good players there that are not with Iowa anymore. I'm just curious if they have the same firepower. They have a good defensive line. I don't know, Shawn, if it's as good of a defensive line as Illinois. They definitely don't have a Mr. Newton on their side, um, a true game wrecker, so to speak. But they do have a good defensive line across the board.
Yeah, they do. Deontay Craig, he picked up a sack last week. He stands out a little bit to me. That they're overall their linebackers. Jay Higgins, I hope no relation to our very own Michael Higgins. He had 16 tackles last week. So yeah, I don't think there's an Adrian Claiborne on this defensive line, but they're a good group. They're going to be that front seven is going to be what they are. Again, no Jack Campbell either. We all know how good he was. We all know Josie Jewell was slightly overrated, but still, I don't know if they have anybody to his level either in that front seven.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's young, so we don't really know much yet about who's going to stand out and be that guy. But right now, it doesn't necessarily seem that they have that guy per se.
Yeah.
And right now, like they haven't been stout against the run either. 55th right now in the country in yards per carry allowed. We'll see how that kind of changes over time. But again, they haven't really played anyone. They haven't played like an Illinois, or they haven't played like an old Wisconsin. They haven't played a Penn State or a Michigan. So like that number actually could get worse before it maybe even gets better. So we'll have to kind of pay attention to that. Um, and if Penn State's able to dominate in the ground, it doesn't even matter what they try to do in the back half. If they can't stop the running game, eventually Drew Allar is going to be able to find his lanes via the play action pass, and none of this is going to matter.
Yeah. And look, they've been good on defense this year. I don't want to say that they haven't been. 18th in scoring defense. Yeah, I'll take that. You do have to look at the competition they've played. Again, not particularly good. But I mean, there are a lot of teams that haven't played very good teams right now. So yeah, I think this defense is going to present a lot of challenges. They're well coached. I think it starts with their coaching with Phil Parker on that defensive side of the ball. And like Cory said previously, watching this chess match is it's going to be a lot of fun. Might be some stressful fun. Might be, I always call when my team is in a close game retroactive fun, where it doesn't feel fun at the time, but then you look back and you're like, oh, that was a fun game. And during the game, you're like, no, this is not fun right now. But I think you're going to see some retroactive fun here.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Some retroactive funds as a interesting way to put it. Only have one fan question today. That was my fault. I kind of got the fan question tweet out there late. It wasn't actually my fault, but whatever. I'll take the blame for it.
We forgive you.
Omari Evans. Let me double check what the question actually is instead of trying to. Here's a question from Matty Ice. Is Omari Evans being in the doghouse concerning? It just feels like he could help give the passing game some juice. Do you agree with that, Shawn?
I don't even want to speculate on the doghouse question. I do think it's a little weird that he played against Delaware if he's had bumps and bruises and he didn't get in until we were up by like 600 points. And then that's the only time we've seen him this year. So I don't know. I don't know what's up with him. But yeah, would he give us some juice? Yeah. I mean, I was a little surprised we didn't see him last week when the offense went stagnant there for the beginning of the third quarter. We were doing nothing for the first three drives. And we ended up being fine. But you would think that would be a time to put Omari Evans in. And instead, the guy that we put in was Caden Saunders, who we haven't seen much of this year. And he did quite well. So I don't know if Evans is hurt or if he's in the doghouse. But I do think if he's available, we should be playing him. If you want to suspend him, suspend him. If he's hurt, he's hurt. But I don't like when coaches do this thing where it's halfway. Like, I don't like that personally. If he's a good player, if he's available, if he suits up, if he's not injured, if he's not suspended, play him. So, yes, I agree with you.
I'm okay bumping him down the depth chart as a disciplinary thing and making him earn it back, especially assuming it is a discipline thing, which we don't even know. But
right, speculation.
Saying you need to earn your spot back, and how do you do that? By cheering on your teammates, and then when you get an opportunity, go prove that you're not going to just be a sulker. You're going to be prepared. I think there's value to that, and there's lessons to be learned in the bigger scheme of things. But I understand what you're also saying, like, just don't play him if you don't want to play him. But I am okay with it. I'm just curious. Like, he caught a touchdown pass in his only catch. Like, is he doing the things needed? I don't know. Also, we'll hopefully get to see more Vanover. And Malik Mega has been out for the last 2 weeks. So hopefully we'll see what's up with Malik Mega.
Yeah, I think he's been missed on special teams. Franklin did actually highlight Malik McClain for, I know he struggled a little bit on offense on Saturday, but he did get it done on special teams in the kick coverage game.
All right. Well, I just want to make sure. Oh, you know what? I wanted to add one more fun little note here. Penn State has the longest FBS against the spread streak without a loss. They are 9-0-1 against the spread. Who cares?
So we've won 10 straight games going into this?
We've covered the spread 9 times, and we...
going back to Ohio State, I know we weren't an underdog in any of those games, so...
We've covered 9, and we must have literally broke even on one somehow if they had a tie. So you can go back 9 games. We've played, 3 so far? Rose Bowl would be 4. So it would have to be the Ohio State game. It was the last time they didn't cover. They probably didn't. They probably didn't. Well, no. Yeah, they probably didn't cover, and maybe there was a tie somewhere in there. I don't know. I don't think they covered Ohio State. They weren't.
I don't think so
favored.
either. I think if it wasn't for that pick 6, they would have. But
yeah. So it must have started right after
the
Ohio State game, if you're curious.
That's a lot of wins in a row.
It is. And again, people, we've mentioned this before. They're up to 10 games now on scoring 30-plus points. Bold prediction time. I think I gave my bold prediction first last time. Shawn, what's your bold prediction for Saturday?
My bold prediction. I think we see Sean Clifford's coming of age a little bit. I think he's gonna.
Whoa! Start over. Clifford Wars are back, baby. I'm not cutting that out, by the way.
Don't.
Okay.
All right.
But I'm going to restart the recording because that was... I might honestly put that in as a blooper somewhere at some point. Like, bloopers of the whole season.
I don't even know why I picked... Maybe it's because we talked to Aeneas. Anyway, I think this is Drew Aller's coming of age a little bit. I think he's going to play better than we're thinking. I think of what Mike Yurcich, the game he called against Iowa 2 years ago. He's got a quarterback with better arm talent. He's got a better offensive line. He's got a more mature team, in my opinion, a more mature offense. It's year 3 in the system. I think he's going to call a brilliant game, and I think Drew Aller is going to shine again in prime time.
Did you put any numbers to that?
I'm going to give him 275 and 3 touchdowns. No picks again. His interception streak continues as well.
275 and 3 touchdowns?
Yep, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And he once again re-enters the Heisman conversation.
Okay. My bold prediction for Saturday whiteout game. Penn State wideouts have been really good for tight ends as of late, and I think that continues on Saturday. I have the tight ends combining for 3 touchdowns on Saturday. Not going to go out on a limb and say who, but I think the tight ends together get 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns against arguably tight end you.
I know, wouldn't it be poetic? Well, they had a really good day against Minnesota last year, and then the year before they had a really good day against Auburn, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so I mean, it seems like if they're like really since Franklin has taken over, if the Titans have a big game, we're winning the game, and it really doesn't matter who we're playing. So, I mean, to do it against Iowa too, I mean, it would be wow, well, how we turn the table.
And didn't Theo Johnson, wasn't it down to Michigan, Iowa, and Penn State for Theo Johnson?
Yes, it was. That's a good call. Yeah.
I'm full of good calls if you just give me a chance.
I got you. Let Cory cook.
Let Cory cook. Shawn, are you ready to give us your prediction for Saturday? And you know what? Let me go to the Shawn cam here.
Get to look at my pretty face for a little while.
We should do this from now on. Yeah, here we go. There we go. All right, take it away.
All right. So I mentioned when we were talking to Aeneas, I mentioned a little bit during the podcast. One of those games, as the game gets closer, getting a little nervous. I got to admit, I am. And it's a lot of it has to do with the respect that I give Iowa's program. Now, do I like Iowa? No. Do I like Kirk Ferentz? No. But I respect them. I respect them a lot. You know, a team that Kirk Ferentz has been there my whole life, and Kirk Ferentz has beat my team a lot. And when that happens, you know, you always just tense up a little bit. Now, that being said, Penn State is a better team. I don't think Iowa's going to be able to keep up with Penn State. I think it's going to be close at halftime. They might even be winning at halftime. Will I be nervous? Not particularly. All right, Cory's shaking his head. Yes, I will. What am I saying? But I think we're going to be able to handle business. I think in the second half, that's when it opens up. I think we see a new kind of adversity thrown at Drew Aller. Like I said, maybe even trailing at halftime. But I think we get it together at the half. I think the leaders on this team emerge. And that's a big thing for this team. And I think Penn State gets it done 28-14.
All right. Good pick, Shawn. I like your part about the leaders emerging. I think that's a good point there. I kind of feel like a kid on Christmas to a certain extent. I've been thinking about this game for a long time. When that 2021 game ended, I really think I'm in the majority with a lot of fans that were like circling the date as soon as we found out the next time Iowa was coming to town. And that day's just a couple days away now. Kirk Ferentz said something this week about how, that's in the past, and a lot of those players aren't even here anymore. That's not a big deal. I think there's still 14 players on this roster from that 2021 squad, and I guarantee you it matters to them. Most of that coaching staff still on this roster, still on this team, still on this program, and I guarantee you it matters to them. And that alone wouldn't necessarily do much for me, because I'm not a believer in outside motivation really coming to play. I think you have to be motivated the entire year, not just the week of a game, in order to beat somebody. You've got to put in the work before the week. You can't just come into a week and all of a sudden decide you're going to work hard and then beat somebody. You've got to do it for quite some time. But this team doesn't really have a weakness that Iowa can exploit. Iowa's coming in limping. Their offense, somehow, some way, might honestly be worse than it usually is because of the production that they currently have out because of injuries. Bryant Ferentz is still their offensive coordinator, and we haven't seen anything wonderful from them. It's a whiteout environment, which I always spot about 10 points. Sorry, I just want to make sure we're still live there. Something cut out funny there. It's a whiteout environment, which I always count as 10 points, roughly. And I don't see a way where Iowa wins this football game. I just don't see a way they do it. Do not think it's possible. Do not think it's possible. I think they try early on to roll the dice because they know they've got to get something going. Maybe they go for it on an early 4th down. Maybe they try to come out throwing and Cade McNamara is not able to get the job done. I don't really know. But all I know is I don't want to be a sitting duck quarterback with Manny Diaz and that defense coming after me in a whiteout. I do not want to be Cade McNamara on Saturday night. And there's probably a million other people in America I'd rather be than Cade McNamara on Saturday night. And so I've got Penn State winning. And I really, Penn State scored 30 points last week and Drew Aller threw for under 50%. I think Penn State wins this football game 41-14, the same exact score it was in 2016, and they run them off the field. And honestly, if they have the chance, I think they try to put up 100. Just don't think there's a chance that Iowa wins this game. It's not your daddy's Iowa in a lot of sense. They don't really have a great ability to stop the run. They don't really have the ability to run the ball. What does Iowa then have at that point? I do agree with you, Shawn. I think it's closer a little bit as two heavyweight boxers would fight it out. But Iowa's going to try to create some momentum at some point. They're going to try to take a chance, and rightfully so, mind you. You ever notice sometimes the gazelle, before it's finally caught by the lion, speeds up in its last second effort to maybe get away? That Iowa is going to try to do that at some point in the second quarter. That last effort. Maybe if I just give everything I got, I can escape the lion, and it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough. Penn State wins big.
I like yours better. Because I would really love to not be worried at all on Saturday night. And could I see it coming? Yeah. I mean, especially if we could make Cade McNamara make some mistakes, maybe even kind of turn the tables around on Iowa again, like you said with your tight end prediction. Maybe we get a defensive touchdown. Maybe we do something on defense, and I think this defense is more than capable of doing that. I could just see, I don't know, something about them, man. I don't know what it is, but they hang around like a rock in my shoe. But I think we'll be all right.
That's a good way to put it. And that's the thing, right? If this was at Iowa, that rock in your shoe analogy takes me a little further. You got to create your own mojo when you're on the road, and there's nobody on that Iowa offense that I think creates that for them. And I know that like a lot of times they can just kind of nickel and dime. You still got to find a way to create some energy, and seriously, like I think Drew Aller has to turn the ball over at least 3 times to give Iowa a serious chance to win this football game.
Right.
It just has to be. There's no and Penn State and Oregon are the only 2 teams in the country right now that haven't turned the football over. Knock on wood. So, I mean, yes, all of the turnovers could catch up with them because I don't think turnovers is necessarily a game of just skill. I think there is luck involved. Ask Iowa. They're really good at taking them away a lot of the time. But to go from none to all of a sudden having just a catastrophe, I would be very surprised. At home, mind you.
Yeah. And that's part of why I'm still picking Penn State to win by 2 scores is because I trust Drew. And I think he's going to be able to get it done. And I trust what we have at the quarterback spot. And I think when you go into a game where you feel like, you have the quarterback advantage, that does wonders for your confidence as a team. And especially when you're playing against a pretty punchless offense. Now, Franklin always talks about winning turnovers, winning the explosive play battles. Well, I think there's a very good chance we win the explosive play battles. So if we just win the turnover battle, we're gonna win this game. I mean, simple as that. Like, it just comes down to that. The only way we could lose is if we lose that turnover battle, and especially lose it by multiple times. Like, if we have 2 or 3 turnovers and they have 0, yeah, it's going to be close right to the end, and there's a decent chance we lose. But I don't think that's going to happen on Saturday.
I think it has to be by multiple. I think it has to. A 1-0 isn't going to do it. 2-1 isn't going to do it. I think it has to be multiple. And, Shawn, what really impressed me is in previous years, Penn State against Iowa would methodically move the football, and then Penn State would either have a big play or they go 3 and out, right? Penn State was shown the ability so far this year, maybe to a fault, that they've been methodical and they haven't necessarily had the big plays yet. And people are now complaining about the big plays, but they've been able to score 30-plus points. Heck, they dropped 63 on Delaware, mind you, but they dropped 63 on Delaware without having a big play. So they've shown the ability where they can actually nickel and dime it down the field, take care of the football, and still get in the end zone. We haven't seen that from a James Franklin-led team before. I mean, that to me is like, wait a second. If I'm Iowa and I'm always trying to protect the big play because I think, Penn State's all or nothing, now they continue. Let's say Penn State has back-to-back drives where they just go down and score, and it's, I don't know, beginning of the second quarter, and it's 14-0. What do you do as an Iowa defense? Do you start putting more guys in a box? Do you now flip your mindset and dare Penn State to go deep? I'd be very curious if that kind of happens, because Penn State's proven the ability, maybe not at all times, but the ability to be methodical in their offense.
They have. And like you said, sometimes with past Penn State teams, they've only had that big play. And that's fine, but you're going to have a lot of trouble running time off the clock. And, being able to string drives together, I think, is very beneficial. Like, I think back to the 2019 whiteout, where we scored 21 points very quick. And then we did nothing until the fourth quarter, KJ Hamler over the top. And that was the offense for the whole second half. That's not this kind of offense. And I would rather this kind of offense because, number one, it's more reliable. It's you could trust it more. It's not because you're going to run into teams that it's going to be just harder to come by. Those bigger plays are going to be harder to come by. And I don't really like feast or famine. And that's not this offense. Now, do I think we have to start taking some more chances? I do. I want to see more explosion. But I think I incorrectly stated on the last podcast that we won the explosive play battle against Illinois. We did not. So I want to see us start getting more of those, both in the run and pass game. But I don't think it necessarily has to happen against Iowa, because that's what Iowa tries to take away. And I think that's going to be all right for us. I think we're going to have some long drives, and it's going to be, I think we're going to be good. Maybe not to Cory's degree. I don't think it's going to be a 41-14 game, although I could see it. I think it's going to be a little closer. And part of that is probably because it's going to be a little more methodical.
Yeah. I just, even if Penn State's methodical, if Iowa can't do anything on offense, like, to be honest with you, I don't know, Shawn, maybe this is the biggest question mark to wrap these things up. Like, we do not know what to expect at all from Iowa's offense, right? Like, there is an avenue where maybe not as many turnovers as Illinois, but as far as offensive production, they could be worse than Illinois offensive production wise. Like, Illinois at least had Isaiah Williams on their team, at least had a decent running back. Altmaier at least had the ability to run with his legs. Like, they had a couple things to get them out of like tight situations. Maybe their defense had you beat, but they have a couple playmakers. I don't know if Iowa has that right now. And so if they don't beat you pre-snap and they just can't run you over, I don't know how they're going to consistently move the football. And that, to me, if any of us knew that, you would easily be able to predict the score. And that's kind of the difference, right? If I was able to play keep away, you get a more of a 28-14 game. If they can't do anything with it, hold my beer.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't do anything, this is going to be a complete blowout. Luke Altmaier, though, handed us a lot. And, did our guys make good plays? Of course. But he threw a lot of ducks, and that helped us greatly. And I know Cade hasn't had a good start to the year, but I mean, he's kind of made it to the national championship not making mistakes. Now, again, did he have a great team? Of course he did. But still, he's shown an ability to go into hostile environments and get wins. He went into Beaver Stadium and got a win, and played well at Beaver Stadium that day. So I think he's a more mature quarterback than Luke Altmaier, and I don't think we're going to see the same kind of mistakes from him. The thing that's going to hold him back is, number one, he's not very talented, and number two, he's hurt. And I think Penn State's going to be able to get to him quite often and pressure him.
Altmaier really didn't play that awful. You go look at those interceptions. There was somebody in his face on almost a lot of those throws. Like, they were not as awful throws. Like the interception of Abdul Carter. Yes, it was right to Abdul Carter. Blitz in his face. Abdul Carter bluffed on the blitz and fooled him a little bit. But there was a guy right in his face. And he did try to throw it from where Curtis Jacobs was blitzing from. So he did try to throw it where the blitz was supposed to come from. The Dixon interception, had to throw it before he wanted to because he was about to get sacked. The Cam Miller interception, same thing. Had to throw it before he wanted to because he was about to get sacked. There was an incompletion on 3rd and 5 where Cam Jacobs gets home. They're throwing a little corner flag route to the tight end, and he looked like he overthrew him. He had to throw it a heartbeat before he wanted to because Curtis Jacobs was in his face. I'm not saying Altmaier is good.
Yeah, the Hardy one was pretty bad, but
okay, the Hardy one, yes.
Although Daquan made a great play on it.
Yeah. I don't know how many quarterbacks really complete that throw, right? Like, maybe it doesn't get picked off, but how many people really complete that throw? My point is, Altmaier is better than what he showed on Saturday. Like, to be honest with you, Illinois didn't run him enough, didn't let him get rhythm enough, and then he had pressure in his face the entire day. That's why I got so fired up about that sack question, because the defensive line and the linebackers were in Altmaier's face all day. And so, to me, I don't really know how good of a quarterback Cade McNamara is when he's got pressure, because, to be honest, we did not do a good job in 2021 about getting pressure on him. We didn't do a good job at all. And he had a really good running game to support him. I'm curious, like, if Cade McNamara is asked to go win this football game, I think he leaves Happy Valley with multiple interceptions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what he could run into, because don't forget that Michigan game. Were we winning after AK's forced fumble, or did we tie?
I think we were down 3 at that point. We might have been tied.
Yeah, and it was one of those plays like, oh God, I forget the score. But I was with my brothers, and as soon as we forced that fumble, I said, if we score a touchdown here, we're going to win. If we kick a field goal, we're going to lose. We kicked a field goal and we lost. And it had that feel to it. But yeah, I mean, Cade played pretty good, but your point is taken. Our defensive line, outside of that AK play, he really wasn't facing pressure much of the day. And they didn't have, I don't believe they had Blake Corum that day, but they still were able to get it done. Now, again, completely different thing. And he's missing, what did we say, 40% of the offensive production. I mean, for any quarterback, if we went in there without Kaytron Allen, without Nick Singleton, and without Theo Johnson or Tyler Warren, one of Tyler Warren or Theo Johnson, yeah, I'd be more nervous about this game too, and I'd still feel like Penn State would win. But when you're the underdog, man, that's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, you take out that Eric All touchdown, and McNamara threw for 167 on 28 attempts, which would be less than 6 yards per attempt, minus that Eric All touchdown. So he did have 3 touchdowns. Most importantly, no interceptions that game. But he was dinking and dunking most of the time underneath. besides, and even the Eric All touchdown, it was probably like a maybe 8-10 yard throw, and then
I mean that play was just as on us as it was a play by them.
Right.
Eric All booked it down the sideline, but Cade, I mean, okay, was there for him, but it wasn't a very challenging throw. So
no. So I mean, I'm not saying like he didn't turn the ball over in Beaver Stadium. He deserves credit for that. But I'm well, obviously I'm not to the belief that he's going to do anything on Saturday. That scares me. And you're right. Cannot emphasize it enough. We don't even know what his health situation is. And again, if I'm a little banged up and I'm having to go into Happy Valley and play Penn State and Manny Diaz's defense, I'm a little terrified, to be honest with you. Like, I wouldn't want to do it healthy. So, you know what? Kudos him for doing it. But I don't think I'd want to go into the lion's den, so to speak, to do that with a hurt quad. But that's all we got. Make sure you've liked this video and subscribed on YouTube. The Lions Den latest episode with Curtis Jacobs actually just dropped on YouTube right now. So you'll be able to watch that tomorrow as well. If you're listening on podcasts, please make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. We'll be back on Monday to break down the Whiteout Iowa game. Shawn, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Yeah. Everybody going down, be safe, have fun. It's going to be a great atmosphere. If it's your first time going to a Whiteout by any chance, it's going to be something you'll never forget. Like we said, what did they say? Be loud, be proud, be respectful. But really, like, don't boo injured players, like we said last time. But be rowdy, be crazy. I can't wait to see the atmosphere. I'll be watching with my dad this week. It's our first game we're watching together this year. So I'm excited. I know Cory has been chomping at the bit for this one. And let's go get it, guys. I'm ready.
Yeah, it's Wednesday night. I'm ready to run through a wall. So can't wait for it. Hopefully it's a party on the field. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. See you on Monday night. For Shawn Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Shout out to Aeneas Hawkins again for being an awesome guest. Make sure you fill out your pick'em, and we will see you on Monday night. Until then, have a good rest of your week, everybody. See ya.
Night, everyone.